Last time I took a look at the Take 5 versus the Prophet 5, a modern take on the Prophet. I don't know, but it's not a copy or a replica of the Prophet 5 in any way. It's not like a small version of it. It's got completely different functions and it does actually sound quite different. So I think a more apt comparison is with the Prophet 6. Is the Take 5 a sort of a cut down version of the Prophet 6? Has the Prophet 6 seen its day? Is this the sort of the new way forward for sequential? Is this going to be more popular? It's definitely half the price, so from that perspective I imagine so, and a lot of the functions are very similar, like we've got effects on both of them and stuff like that. So let's take a look first then at the oscillators. The oscillators on the Take 5 are a much closer match with the Prophet 6 than they were on the Prophet 5, in that both oscillators have this blend function between the different waveforms. On the Take 5 it goes from a sine through to the saw, to a square, to a pulse, to 0. And it's slightly different on the Prophet 6 in that we go from a triangle through to the saw, through to the square, and then we have an individual pulse width amount here. There are some differences though. We've got fine tune of both oscillators on the Take 5. We've only got fine tune of oscillator 2 on the Prophet 6. They can both be decoupled from the keyboard on the Take 5. It's within the sort of menu system. If we go into here, oscillator 1 and 2 key follow, on or off. We've got sync, we've got FM that I showed in the Prophet 5 video, and I'll show that again here just to show how they sort of tie in with each other. And we've got a low frequency mode on the Prophet 6 that we don't have on the Take 5, but Take 5 has got an extra LFO, and that LFO is per voice, and you can then modulate the LFO across the keyboard, so you can get polyphonic LFO pretty much. If I bring in LFO 1, let's modulate the LFO rate depending on where you are on the keyboard. Amount up. So it's slower down here, faster up here. I'm not sure that's tracking the keyboard perfectly. I don't know what number of, what amount of modulation you'd need to do that perfectly, but it's just a bit more flexible on the Prophet 6 from that standpoint. But essentially, what you can do on the oscillators on the Prophet 6, you can do on the Take 5 almost, but we'll look at that when we come to FM. So should we take a listen to them now? Interesting, I never noticed that when I did the Prophet 5 video, but it sort of changes, doesn't it, the shape as you go lower. Much more bent. Well, when I say I didn't notice it, I actually did, but I thought I'd done something wrong, because later on in the video while I was looking at it, I noticed it was flat. I didn't realise it changed across the width of the keyboard. Bendy, flat. And the big thing you notice looking at that frequency analysis is that there's a big drop off. We never get up to those heady heights of 20 kilohertz, which we did on the Prophet 5. Let's try it on this. Yeah, it's straight up there. Try and get the volumes matched a bit better. So again, Prophet 6 is brighter, more open sounding than the Take 5. If we put that on a chord, so there are differences. It's not a replica of the Prophet 6 in a smaller format. Let's try a square, shall we? Again, there's that roll off, but it's not quite as distinct on the lower frequencies. Let's try something higher up. I'll look at FM in a minute like I did with the Prophet 5. Let's move over to the filters then. We saw with the Take 5 against the Prophet 5 that this isn't as resonant as the Prophet 5. Is it as resonant as the Prophet 6? I doubt it, because this was like the Prophet 5, but let's have a listen, shall we? And it has a lovely smooth cut-off knob. This is brilliant. It's the best cut-off knob I've got on any of my sequential synths. Lovely and smooth. So sounds nice so far. And you'll notice you don't lose any bass or any volume when you bring the resonance in on either of these. So very similar so far, but the resonance isn't on full yet on the Prophet 6, where it is on full on the Take 5. The one thing you really do notice on the Prophet 6 is the stepping of the filter as it quantizes to semitones. Let's just put it on a single note now and watch your ears. Hear that stepping? I don't like that, but it does have its uses. And look at the height of that resonant peak. It's much, much higher than the fundamental. Huge difference. Much more resonant on the Prophet 6. Much more under control on the Take 5. So again, like the Prophet 5, the Prophet 6 on around 80% is full whack on the Take 5. Prophet 6 has also got the high pass. This has got a high pass in the effects section. And we'll look at that because if you do want to emulate sounds from the Prophet 6 on the Take 5, you'll be using this. So there's a lot more filtering going on with the Prophet 6. The filters then on the Prophet 6 would definitely win if this was a competition. This does have a drive circuit as well. You can hear it there, it's quite subtle at times. But it does add a bit of girth. The Prophet 6 doesn't have distortion into the filter, although it does have an analog overdrive circuit. This has got an overdrive circuit as well on Take 5, but I don't think this one's analog, and maybe we'll take a look at that in a minute. So let's move over just quickly to discuss the envelopes. They've both just got two envelopes, but the Take 5 is a little bit more flexible, well, quite a lot more flexible, I suppose, in that envelope 2 can be just for the amplifier, or it can be for the filter and the amplifier. So acting like a Juno 106, for example, we've only got a single ADSR envelope. And we can also have it on filter and gate, which again, like the 106, you can have the single envelope, but working on the filter, and your amplifier goes through the gate. And that means you can use a free envelope on anything you like in the mod matrix. You can still use any of the envelopes for anything else, but it just means you've got one that's completely free if you're using envelope 2 for the filter and the amp, for example. So pretty snappy. Because the resonance is so high on this, you're getting a lot more thud, aren't you? A little bit clicky down there. It's like you're getting 2 clicks. Just checking I'm not listening to it coming back through the speakers. Yeah, I feel like the Prophet 6 is just a little bit more defined. Okay, I think that does the envelopes. Don't want to harp on about them for hours. Let's take a listen to the FM. Set them up both the same. I've got a sawtooth on oscillator 1 and a square on oscillator 2, an octave lower. So let's try bringing in some FM. Frequency of 1, using oscillator 2. Interesting that when you go negative, you get more, or more of an obvious pitch change. Try it on this. When we do it on this, we lose oscillator 2 from the mix. Let's try that on this. Always a bit lackluster compared to the Prophet 5, the Prophet 6. Much closer actually on the Prophet 6 than it was on the Prophet 5. To all intents and purposes, they're the same. It feels like they've used the same sort of FM techniques to make the FM on both of them. Very close, almost like the same synth, that, isn't it? But we can go negative on the Prophet 6. Completely different sound. Let's take a look now maybe at the effects. We've got 2 channels of effects on both. This one we've got a multi-effect that you can play one effect at a time, and the reverb. On the Prophet 6 we've got different effects on both. So Prophet 6 we've got delays, chorus, phaser, flanges, and on effect 2 we've got delays, chorus, phasers, ring mod, flanger, and reverbs. Whereas the reverb on this is just reverb, so slightly more limited. But let's take a listen to like the reverb, because that's the bit that you use the most, I suppose. And that's really nice, I think. It's not going to worry any of my really expensive reverb pedals, but for an onboard effect, that's pretty good. But you don't get any options, you don't get hall, plate, spring, you just get the one, although it's quite nice. Let's try quite a tighter one. So there's a range of things you can do with it. Let's try it on the Prophet 6. Not quite as big and dramatic. Let's go to the plate. And actually the Prophet 6 is quite old now. I think reverbs have come on a fair amount, and especially people using reverbs on synths, they do like a little bit of this. So although the reverb on the Take 5 isn't as flexible as it is on the Prophet 6, on the Prophet 6 we've got 4, is it, different reverbs? Yeah, hall, room, plate, and spring. So you don't get those really dramatic effects on the reverb on the Prophet 6 that you can get on the Take 5. And that's repeated really with this other effects section where we've got the delays and the phases and the like. On the delays, for example, we can go into all sorts of crazy madness. You can't get that on the Prophet 6. It's a lot more well behaved. Let's try the chorus. Nice, let's try it over here. So actually you get more radical effects with the chorus on the Prophet 6. So a bit of give and take here, isn't there? Let's try a flanger or two. All sorts of madness. Yeah, so there's not much in that, is there? Try the ring mod. So that sounds like ring mod. I'm not quite sure what it's doing or how it works, but it's very useful. Let's try it on here. It seems to be working in a very similar way. When you turn oscillator 2 down and you change the pitch, it doesn't affect the ring mod in any way. And that's exactly the same on the Prophet 6. So I'd have to read up on that, but they're both fairly similar. On this we've got a distortion as well. Which is quite useful. You don't have that on the Prophet 6, but you do have the distortion circuit. And that's really nice for making kick drums actually. You can get some really nice tones out of that. Let's try it on this one. I don't think this one is analog. No, completely different character. I'm not going to spend too long doing that. But overall, I feel like the Take 5's effects are a little bit more effecty, a little bit more fun to use. Be nice if they were a bit more flexible so you could have the effects that you've got on the top row on the reverb row as well. But the reverb is an awful lot better, I think an awful lot more useful than it is on the Prophet 6. It might not be as accurate and it might not be as tweakable, but it just feels like a more fun thing to use. So I think that brings me to the end of it without going into every single different function of it. So what are my final thoughts? So really interesting little comparison that. I've not tried to match tone for tone because all that's showing is really how good I am at matching tone for tone. There's some things that you can't do on the Prophet 6 and there's some things that you can't do on the Take 5. But if I took pretty much all the sounds I use on the Prophet 6, I could replicate them on the Take 5. And I'm not going to do it because it takes far too long, so just believe me. Whether there's slight differences in there, I don't know. They're of no importance to me whatsoever. But the only big difference really, again, as it was with the Prophet 5, is the filter isn't quite as resonant. It hasn't quite got the punch or the dirt of the Prophet 6 or the Prophet 5. And you can see, you know, sequential aren't going to make something that's identical to the Prophet 6 for half the price, are they? That wouldn't make very good commercial sense. So there are differences, but if I was thinking about a Prophet 6 but didn't have the money, I would highly recommend the Take 5 actually. So I hope that was of use to you. And if you are thinking about buying one and you're in the States, either one of these or any synth in particular, please use the link below because I'll get a little tip and it won't cost you any more. So all supports the channel. And if you did enjoy that, please subscribe and ring that bell so that you don't miss any of my future videos. And maybe even go to my Patreon page and support me there as well. The more support I can get, the more of this sort of stuff I can do, because I can't keep all the synths. I sell them and I lose money every time. But it does pay for me to do this, which is a bit of fun. So I will see you next time.